The Miners Candlestick. You can wear it on your hat. You can jam it into a post. You can even hang it from a ledge. What do you say we take a look at making a Miners Candlestick inspired by Francis Whitaker? Good morning and welcome back to Black Bear Forge. Now personally, I'm not sure I would have wanted to use a Miners Candlestick as my only light source working in a mine, but apparently it was the technology of the day. Today the old ones are highly collectible, and making a Miners Candlestick is a great blacksmithing exercise. This is a real exercise in isolating mass and drawing things out and forging each step of the way to get just what you want. Now there are lots of different versions of a Miners Candlestick. I had no idea how many different varieties there were when I set out to make this project, but the one that I am inspired by mostly is the one that Francis Whitaker made. And there's a set of sample pieces hanging on the wall in the shop in Carbondale, Colorado. Now I took a picture of these sample pieces, but unfortunately I don't have any measurements of them. So I don't have a good reference of exactly what any of these things are. And I've asked the shop foreman, shop person, shop woman, I've asked Olivia over at the Colorado Rocky Mountain School if she would please take some measurements. She's probably going to get back to me the day that this films because she's been out of town. So right now I'm just going with my best guess. And my original best guess was that Francis's original cutout was about something like this. And this is a piece of 1/4 inch by 1 1/4 by 10 inch flat bar, and it makes a Miners Candlestick that's about this big. Now this Miners Candlestick is almost 12 inches long, and most of the originals seem to be in the 8.5 to 10 inch range, although there were some this size, so it isn't completely unheard of, but it seems to be kind of rare in what little research I've been able to do online, and I don't have a big assortment of antiques to look at, so I've kind of got to go with pictures online and the few pictures that actually have measurements of what you're working on. But I think this is a little bit too big. It's awfully heavy. I don't think I'd want to wear that on my hat, and it just doesn't need to be that big. I think this one is a little bit better size, and it's just right at 10 inches long, which is about 250 millimeters long. And to get to that point, this is the blank that I started with. And this blank is 1/4 by 1 by 8 inches long. So I had to do some scaling and figure out some things on Francis's drawing, and I've made a lot of samples in the last couple of weeks just to see what works the best. So if you're in metric, that's about 6 millimeters by 25 millimeters by 200 millimeters long. Now the key to Francis's method of doing this, and this is certainly not the only way to do it, but it's roughing out this blank. So you start with this piece of material, and we are going to transfer this pattern onto it and cut it out first. And this isolates all of our masses for what we're going to be working on. This becomes the spike of the candle holder, which is this part right here. This becomes the hook that hangs from your hat or from a timber. This section here is the bow. And this section here becomes the candle cup. So you do something a little bit different to each section, but isolating it like this and setting it up makes your life a little bit easier. And this is the blank part way through, so you can see the spike, the part that'll be the bow, this will be the hook, and this will be the candle holder. So to transfer this, I'm just going to clamp it to my heavy work table here. And then I'm going to use a transfer punch, a 1/4 inch diameter transfer punch, right in the corner of each of these cutouts. And on this one longer section, I'm going to put one in the center. And that way I end up with nice radiuses on my cutout because I'm going to drill these out. And then I'm going to scribe my cut lines. Then we can take this to the drill press, drill the holes, and then pick one of several methods to saw those out. Now this wouldn't be that big a deal to just go ahead and saw with a hacksaw. And regardless of how you cut this, you can just come in here with a cold chisel and knock that little web out. Then I like to make sure I file that clean. Don't want anything that's going to make a stress riser and cause a crack later. But personally, I prefer to do these on the little portaband. You could use an angle grinder with a cutoff disc. You could even chisel them all out if you wanted to. And again, I just knocked that little web out with a cold chisel. Breaks out pretty easily. So notice this is now a lot harder to get in and file than this piece was, because these ears are in the way. So we're going to go to the forge and put a little 90-degree twist in this piece, and that's going to make that a lot easier to get in and file, going to make it easier to draw these pieces out. And then we'll be off and running on forging our Miners Candlestick. If you're looking for the exact measurements of this blank, I'll do a little shot of the blank with a ruler, and you can pause the video, do a screenshot, print that out if you want to, do whatever you want to copy that. However, I have the drafting department, which would be my lovely wife Janet, working on a PDF file that will show not only the blank, but all of the steps and a few basic instructions on how to go from the blank to this, and finally to the Miners Candlestick. And I'll talk more about that at the end of the video. So it's really very easy to just give this a little bit of a twist and get it out of the way. That way you can get a file in here, and I just go ahead and file this hot. You're not going to hurt your files. You're not leaving it in contact with the hot material long enough. Then real quickly, I just knock the corners off the part that'll be the hook. Otherwise, I'll end up folding over the end. We're just going to draw this out over the horn. Or at least we're going to start it over the horn. Now, if you're working up like this, make sure you don't accidentally hit that. But that's why we'll need to go to the face to get in closer to there. If we go over the edge, we can drop that off of there and protect it much better. Now at this stage, I don't want this coming to too sharp a point. It'd be easy to damage it, so I just want to get a nice start on my drawing out here. And I want it to be about 5 inches, which is how wide my anvil is. So I can just measure this right there, and it's getting close. We're back over the horn for this. It's okay if that bends. Plenty of time to straighten it. take this down to about 5/16 of an inch square. It'll end up more like 1/4 when we're done, but to start with. You see how giving this piece a twist really keeps it out of our way nicely. My goal here is to take this to 9 inches between this point and this point. I'm at 6 now. I'm more concerned about my length than I am the exact dimension at this point. As long as we don't get below that 1/4 inch. And I think we'll move up to the face and try to clean it up as we get the last 1.25 inches out of it. Keep an eye out for thick and thin spots. Work the thick spots, not the thin spots. 8.5. We're getting really close. We're just a hair over 1/4 inch there. And of course, no two of these things absolutely have to be alike. So if you end up with one a little longer, one a little shorter, it's not really going to matter. Huge range of designs and sizes in the old ones. So if I don't quite make the 9 inches, I'll be okay. I think we're going to leave it there. That's 8 3/4. Next thing I want to do is I want to untwist this now. I've tried drawing this hook out with it twisted like this, and I think it's easier to just go ahead and untwist it. So the next thing I want to do is put a convenience bend in here so we can get to that hook. You don't want to make any tight corners here. You want this to be a nice even bend because you're going to straighten it out again later. Now we just want to draw that out. This may still lap over the ends and create some little fish lips. If it does, cut it off before you finish it. As this gets longer, it gets easier. We want to go to about 3 inches on here. This hook can either be round or it can be square. Again, the examples I've seen online have a huge variety of approaches. And some of them have very tall hooks and some of them have very short hooks. Right now, this one's at 2.5. I'm going to try and take a little bit more from the base here. Go ahead and round this up because I think it looks better. It doesn't have to come to a real sharp point, but because it might have to go in a little eyelet or something on your hat, if you're really wearing it as a cap lamp, it can't have a little curly-Q or anything else. So that's 3 1/8. That'll be just fine. Now we need to straighten this out. Now this transition here I will file before I bend this up. So you can see how a couple of simple techniques of isolating the mass and creating those convenience bends and twists made that a fairly straightforward operation. I think I'm going to clean my spike up a little bit. It's a little fat right through here. Yeah, it looks better. I don't mind forging the very end of the blank after everything's been up, but I would like this transition to be done before I get to that stage. So this is a good time to do that. And now it's just as long as I want it to be at this point. The next thing we want to do is we want to work on the bow, because this typically is chamfered or has some kind of a half round. And for that we have made a swedge. And I'll provide a link to the video that we made this swedge using the hydraulic press and the power hammer right up here in this corner. Now to create this round section on the bow so it's comfortable to push with your hand when you're setting it into a timber, I'm going to use the swedge. But most of these, you'll see the candle holder is on the left side as you're pushing. So if you're pushing this way, the candle holder is on your left. Now to do that, that means if I'm working from this side, I want the spike pointing to my right, and that gets the bow and the candle holder both on the correct side. If you do this backwards, it's no big deal. You just end up with having to bend it the other direction, and your candle holder ends up on the other side. But then when we turn it around, I want the candle cup, the little flag here, pointing the other way. So just pay attention to that as we do this, and it shouldn't be any big deal. But if it ends up backwards, there are some of them with the candle holder on the other side, but most of them are this way. And I want to leave about 1 inch from my hook. Watch how this spreads widthwise. That'll tell you if you're going the right depth or not, and how even you're forging. This will take a few heats. But you can kind of see what that's doing. I got a step there. I made this a fairly crisp transition. When we first forged this, I made it real round. But I decided I wanted it more crisp on one side, and this side is more round. So my transition from square to round always starts here. And I'll turn it around and do the other end when we get to that end. So make sure you put it back in the same way every time. And yes, I've messed that up. Not this time, but in the past. That's why I know you need to make sure you put it in the same way every time. That's looking pretty good. If you need to, you can clean this up with a file, but it's way more efficient if you can do it all while you're at the anvil. This time I want to make sure I point the flag that direction In this shoulder, I want about 1.5 inches from the candle cup. The exact relationship between the candle cup and the hook seems to vary quite a bit in the originals. It would be nice if it was a balance point, but I'm not sure that any of them really balance all that well. This is mostly just straightening at this heat. I'm only hammering the edges to try and keep everything parallel. You say if you need to, resort to a file at the very end. I'll probably do that anyways, just to kind of clean things up and make sure there's no sharp edges. And if this doesn't come out to my ideal measurement, I'm okay with that. You see, there's a lot of variation in the old ones I've been able to find measurements on. So we are now 9 3/4. I'm just going to leave that there. That'll have to be enough. Next thing we want to do is spread this piece out into a thin piece of sheet metal. Somewhere between a 32nd and a 1/16 of an inch thick is probably about right. And this is just a matter of cross-peening it. And it is going to spread both directions, even though in the long run we want it flush with the bottom, so we'll have to trim it. Before I get it too thin, it needs to be a little longer as well, but that's plenty wide enough. I'll be able to get at least 1 1/4 inches, maybe even 1.5 inches piece widthwise here. So we'll stretch this out over the horn. If you start to see these little rises like that, that means that's thinner, and this spot that hasn't come out is thicker. That just tells you where you need to work. I'm trying to get all the peen marks and the divots from the horn out of it. The exact size and shape of this is just kind of dependent on what you want your candle cup part to look like. Mostly I'm going for smooth and an even thickness at this point. Hello, it's future me back from tomorrow, and this is as far as I got editing the video. So to make sure that it gets posted on time, I'm going to go ahead and call it quits right here. We're going to post this, but next week we'll pick up with the exciting conclusion of making a Miners Candlestick. Now earlier I mentioned a PDF file. That PDF file will have the scale drawing with the pattern for this starting piece, the blank that you need to start with. It's not quite ready, but by the time next week's video posts, we should have that PDF file. It should be ready to go, and it'll be in the Etsy shop. When it is ready, I'll list it in the video description on both this video and the video next week when we complete our Miners Candlestick. That means if you want to go just off of the image at the beginning of this video, you've got a week to cut one of these out, rough it out to this point, and then hopefully get it close to this point, but without the candle cup. This is where we'll pick up when we start again next week. We'll talk about cutting and shaping the candle holder. Then we'll make the whole thing into a Miners Candlestick. Really isn't that much left to do, but I don't want to be in a rush to try and get it edited in the next couple of hours so I can get this up for tomorrow. But if you can do that much, you'll be ready to go next week on the final part of this two-part video on making a Miners candle holder. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, I would love it if you hit that subscribe button. Feel free to stick around, watch a few of the other videos, share the videos with your friends. Then by all means, make time in your day to get out to your shop, maybe cut out a blank for a Miners Candlestick and start working on it. But stay safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next one.